From the very beginning of our lives, we are quietly shaped by forces we barely notice. As children, we absorb expectations, rules, and unspoken norms from the environment around us. We learn how to behave, how to be accepted, and most importantly, how to adapt ourselves to fit into a structure that already exists. Yet in that adaptation, something subtle but essential begins to fade. The connection to our authentic self, the deeper essence that lives within the psyche, gradually becomes obscured. Carl Jung devoted his life to exploring this hidden dimension, revealing that true self-love is not simply a feeling, but a profound alignment with who we truly are. And within that realization lies a powerful truth. If you genuinely love yourself, you cannot continue to accept less than what you deeply deserve. Consider how often you have found yourself in situations that seem normal on the surface, yet leave you feeling quietly depleted inside. Perhaps you have been part of a relationship where your energy flows outward endlessly, but very little returns to nourish you. Or maybe you remain in a job that offers security, but drains your spirit, and you tell yourself it is safer not to risk change. You might even notice certain people in your life who, instead of supporting your growth, subtly diminish your sense of worth. These patterns are not random, and they are not accidental. Jung would suggest that the answer lies within a hidden dimension of the psyche known as the shadow. From an early age, we are conditioned to suppress parts of ourselves that do not align with what is considered acceptable. Emotions, desires, and traits that do not fit social expectations are pushed aside. Over time, we begin to construct an identity based on what we believe others want to see. But what we suppress does not disappear. It does not dissolve or vanish. Instead, it retreats into the unconscious, forming what Jung described as the shadow. And this shadow does not remain silent. It expresses itself indirectly through the choices we make, the relationships we enter, and the patterns we repeat. What we refuse to confront internally has a tendency to reappear externally, often disguised as circumstance or fate. This is why so many people find themselves trapped in cycles that feel strangely familiar. They seek love, yet repeatedly encounter disappointment. They pursue fulfillment, yet remain in environments that stifle them. On the surface, it may appear as if life is working against them, but on a deeper level, something within them has not yet recognized its own worth. A part of the psyche still operates under the belief that less is all it deserves. True transformation begins when we turn inward rather than outward. Instead of searching for validation or answers in the external world, we begin to explore the inner landscape of our own mind. Jung emphasized that the unconscious is not an enemy to be feared, but a messenger to be understood. Every experience we encounter reflects something within us. And if we continue to tolerate less than we deserve, it is not because the world is inherently limiting us, but because there is still an unresolved belief within us that allows it. Imagine waking up one day with a clear realization that everything you have been seeking externally has always existed within you, that you do not need approval to be worthy, that you do not need to prove yourself to be enough. This is not merely an idea to contemplate, but a reality to be experienced. And that experience begins with a decision. The decision to know yourself. The decision to face what you have avoided. the decision to stop compromising your value. When you truly begin to love yourself, your actions shift in subtle but powerful ways. You no longer settle for connections that lack depth because you understand that you deserve something real. You begin to question environments that drain you because you recognize that your purpose extends beyond mere survival. You stop excusing behavior that diminishes you because you have started to see your own value clearly. These changes are not sudden or magical, but they are inevitable once your perspective shifts. However, this path is not easy. Jung described the journey toward the true self, known as individuation, as a process that demands courage. It requires letting go of the identity you have built over time and stepping into the unknown aspects of who you really are. It involves confronting fears, questioning beliefs, and releasing attachments that once felt essential. Many people resist this process, not because they lack the desire for change, but because the unfamiliar feels more threatening than the familiar pain they already know. This raises an important question. How long are you willing to continue accepting less than what you know is right for you? How many times will you justify situations that, deep down, you know are not aligned with your truth? There is no external signal that will arrive at the perfect moment to tell you when to change. There is no guarantee, no clear instruction, no external validation that will make the decision easier. The only signal you truly need is already within you. That quiet sense of discomfort, that subtle feeling that something is not quite right, is not something to ignore. It is your unconscious communicating with you. It is guiding you, pointing you toward a path that is more aligned with who you are meant to become. When you begin to listen to that inner voice, when you allow yourself to move away from what no longer resonates with you, something remarkable begins to happen. Your external reality starts to shift, not because the world itself has changed, but because your relationship with it has transformed. You begin to notice new possibilities that were always present, but previously invisible to you. You encounter people who align more closely with your values. Opportunities emerge that reflect your evolving sense of self. This is not coincidence, but a reflection of internal alignment. As you continue this process, you begin to understand a deeper truth that Jung often emphasized. Many of the situations and relationships in our lives act as mirrors. They reflect aspects of ourselves that have not yet been fully understood or integrated. If you have spent years accepting less than you deserve, it is not because you are incapable of receiving more. It is because a part of you has been conditioned to believe that less is sufficient. But that belief is not an inherent truth. It is a learned pattern, shaped by past experiences, reinforced by repetition, and maintained by fear. The unconscious mind operates like a magnet, drawing toward you situations that confirm what you already believe about yourself. If you carry the belief that you're not enough, you will unconsciously align with people and environments that reinforce that perception. If you associate love with struggle or pain, you may find yourself drawn to relationships that reflect that dynamic. This is why change at the surface level often fails to create lasting transformation. You can change your surroundings, your relationships, even your circumstances. But if the underlying belief remains unchanged, the pattern will reappear in a different form. The root is not external. It is internal. And until it is addressed, it will continue to influence your reality. Awareness of this truth can feel unsettling. There may be moments when you feel drawn back toward what is familiar, even if it no longer serves you. Your mind may attempt to convince you that it is safer to remain where you are, even if it means compromising your well-being. But this sense of safety is often an illusion. What appears stable on the surface may actually be a form of stagnation. The longer you remain in that space, the more you delay the life that is truly aligned with your potential. Growth requires movement, and movement often involves uncertainty. Jung described the integration of the shadow as a necessary step toward living a complete and authentic life. The shadow contains not only what we reject, but also what we have yet to discover about ourselves. Accepting less than you deserve is often a manifestation of that unexamined shadow. It is the result of internalized beliefs that have never been questioned, and the only way to transform those beliefs is through conscious awareness. This means observing your patterns honestly, questioning your assumptions, and exploring the origins of your fears. When you engage in this process, something begins to shift within you. Your perception changes, your reactions change, and gradually, your external experiences begin to change as well. You stop pursuing connections that lack reciprocity because you no longer seek validation outside yourself. You become more selective about where you invest your energy because you understand its value. At this stage, something else begins to emerge. Jung referred to it as synchronicity, a phenomenon where meaningful coincidences begin to occur when you're aligned with your true self. Situations seem to fall into place. Encounters feel significant. Opportunities appear at the right moment. But these experiences are not random. They reflect a deeper harmony between your inner world and your outer reality. Many people wait for external proof before they commit to inner change. They expect the world to validate them before they are willing to trust themselves. But the process works in the opposite direction. Change begins within. You must choose yourself before the world reflects that choice back to you. This journey is not linear. There will be moments of clarity and moments of doubt. Times when you feel aligned and times when you feel uncertain. There will be instances where the familiar seems easier, where the discomfort of growth tempts you to return to what you already know. But each time you face that choice, you are given an opportunity to reaffirm your commitment to yourself. Self-love is not a final destination you arrive at once and for all. It is a continuous practice. It is expressed through your decisions, your boundaries, and your willingness to honor your own truth. And as you continue to embody that practice, your life begins to transform in ways that go far beyond what you once imagined. As this internal shift deepens, you begin to notice a profound change in how you perceive your life. Situations that you once tolerated without question now start to feel misaligned, even uncomfortable. What you used to excuse suddenly becomes clear in a way that cannot be ignored. It is not that the world itself has transformed overnight, but rather that your awareness has sharpened. You are seeing reality without the filters that once softened its edges. And while this clarity can feel unsettling, it is also the beginning of something essential, because you cannot transform what you refuse to see. There comes a moment in this process where you're faced with a decision that cannot be avoided. Once you recognize that you have been accepting less than you deserve, you can no longer return to unconscious acceptance. You either continue forward into the unknown, or you retreat back into familiar patterns that no longer support you. And this decision is rarely comfortable. Letting go of what is known, even when it is limiting, can feel like stepping into emptiness. Yet that emptiness is not a void in the negative sense. It is a space of potential, a place where something new can emerge. Jung spoke about this transitional space as a necessary phase in the process of individuation. As you release identities, roles, and attachments that no longer reflect your truth, you may temporarily feel disconnected or uncertain. Many people resist this stage because it lacks the stability they are accustomed to. But avoiding it only prolongs the cycle. The discomfort you feel is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something within you is changing. When you begin to let go, you may notice resistance not only from within yourself, but also from your environment. People who once felt comfortable around you may react differently. Some may question your decisions. Others may misunderstand your intentions. This is not necessarily because they wish you harm, but because your growth disrupts the patterns they are familiar with. When you change, the dynamics around you inevitably shift, and not everyone is prepared to adapt to that change. At this point, it becomes essential to remember that your path toward authenticity is not meant to be universally understood. You cannot expect others to fully grasp what you are experiencing, especially if they have not undergone a similar process themselves. This journey is deeply personal. It requires you to trust your own perception, even when it is not validated by those around you. One of the greatest challenges in this process is not the fear of what lies ahead, but the attachment to what lies behind. The past has a powerful hold on the human psyche. We cling to relationships, environments, and identities not because they are aligned with who we are, but because they are familiar. There is a certain comfort in predictability, even when it comes at the cost of growth. But clinging to what no longer resonates only keeps you anchored in a version of yourself that you are outgrowing. Letting go is often misunderstood as loss, but in reality, it is a form of alignment. You're not losing something that was truly meant for you. You are releasing what no longer fits who you are becoming, and this distinction is crucial. What is genuinely aligned with your essence does not require force or constant compromise. It remains, evolves, and grows with you. What falls away does so because it was never meant to be permanent. Take a moment to reflect on your current life. Observe the relationships you maintain, the environment you inhabit, and the way you spend your time. Ask yourself honestly whether these elements reflect your true self or whether they are remnants of a past version of who you were. This kind of reflection requires courage because it may reveal truths that are difficult to accept. But without that honesty, transformation cannot occur. Life constantly provides subtle signals when something is no longer aligned. A persistent feeling of exhaustion after interacting with certain people, a quiet resistance toward environments that once felt comfortable, an unexplainable sense of restlessness that lingers beneath the surface. These are not random experiences. They are messages from your psyche, guiding you toward greater alignment. Ignoring them does not make them disappear. It only delays the moment when they must be confronted. Jung emphasized that the unconscious communicates through symbols, emotions, and patterns rather than direct logic. This is why intuition often manifests as a feeling rather than a clear explanation. Learning to trust that feeling is an essential part of the process. It requires you to move beyond the need for external certainty and develop a deeper connection with your inner world. As you continue to align with yourself, you may find that your sense of identity begins to shift. You start to detach from roles that once defined you. You realize that you are not limited to the labels you have carried, nor the expectations that have been placed upon you. Your identity becomes less about external validation and more about internal coherence. You begin to act in ways that reflect who you are, rather than who you believe you should be. This shift has a direct impact on how you interact with the world. You set boundaries more clearly, not out of defensiveness, but out of self-respect. You learn to say no without feeling the need to justify yourself excessively. You become more selective about where you invest your energy, recognizing that your time and attention are valuable resources. These changes may seem small, but they create a ripple effect that transforms your entire life. As this transformation unfolds, something remarkable begins to happen. The external world starts to reflect your internal state with increasing precision. Situations that once felt complicated become simpler. Decisions that once felt overwhelming become clearer. You begin to experience a sense of flow, where actions and outcomes feel more aligned. This is not because life has become effortless, but because you are no longer acting against yourself. Jung described this alignment as a state in which the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche are in harmony. When this harmony is present, you are no longer divided internally. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions begin to move in the same direction. And from that coherence, a sense of stability emerges that is not dependent on external circumstances. However, reaching this state requires a level of honesty that many people avoid. You must be willing to confront the beliefs that have shaped your behavior. You must question the narratives you have accepted without examination. And perhaps most importantly, you must take responsibility for the role you have played in maintaining patterns that no longer serve you. This is not about blame, but about awareness. Once you recognize that your external experiences are connected to your internal state, you regain a sense of agency. You are no longer a passive participant in your life. You become an active creator of your experience. And with that realization comes the power to choose differently. There are no shortcuts in this process. There is no formula that can instantly transform your life without effort. The work is internal, and it requires consistency. It requires you to choose alignment repeatedly, even when it's uncomfortable. It requires you to trust yourself, even when doubt arises. And it requires you to remain committed to your growth, even when progress feels slow. But the result of this commitment is profound. When you truly begin to love yourself, not as an abstract concept, but as a lived reality, your entire way of being changes. You no longer seek approval in the same way. You no longer tolerate what diminishes you. You no longer settle for situations that conflict with your values. Instead, you begin to build a life that reflects your authenticity. And in that process, you discover something that was always there, waiting beneath the surface. A sense of wholeness that does not depend on external validation. A sense of worth that is not conditional. A sense of direction that is guided from within rather than imposed from outside. This is the essence of what Jung pointed toward. The journey is not about becoming someone new, but about uncovering who you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning. It is about integrating the parts of yourself that you once rejected and allowing them to contribute to a more complete and authentic identity. As you move forward, you may still encounter challenges. Doubt may arise, fear may resurface, old patterns may attempt to reassert themselves. But each time you recognize these tendencies, you have an opportunity to respond differently. Each moment becomes a choice. And with each choice, you reinforce the reality you are creating. If you ever find yourself hesitating, wondering whether to let go or to hold on, return to a simple question. If you truly loved yourself, what would you choose? The answer may not always be easy, but it will always be honest. And that honesty is the foundation of transformation. Because in the end, self-love is not about comfort. It is about truth. It is about aligning your life with that truth, even when it requires change. And when you make that alignment consistently and consciously, your life begins to reflect it in ways that cannot be forced or imitated. Everything shifts from that point forward, not because you're trying to control the world around you, but because you're finally in alignment with yourself. And when that alignment is real, life responds accordingly.